Psychology is overrated. Yes, that's right. And I'm going to tell you a different way to approach all your problems. If you have serious mental illness, if you overthink, whatever your problem is, I'm going to tell you a new way to approach this that you've never thought of before. And this is what allowed me to go from having serious, crippling bipolar disorder, where I was hospitalized in the psych ward 4 times, to now living an incredible life where I support myself, where I have amazing friends, great relationships. It was changing my approach from focusing on psychology to focusing on metabolic brain health that made the difference. So if you're struggling with anything like that, whatever you're going through, even if you don't have a serious mental illness, whatever it is, you've probably been sold a lie about how to approach that, the right methodology to approach that. And in this video, I'm going to explain the correct way that will allow you to achieve that contentment, that recovery, that mood stability, whatever it is you're looking for. Okay, so let's get into it. So for decades, for centuries, we've been approaching mental illness and cognitive issues from a psychological perspective. Going back to Freud, going back to Jung, where they had these extensive theories about the collective unconscious. Jung had theories about the personal unconscious, the makeup of the psyche, right? That there was a personal unconscious and then there was a collective unconscious common to all humanity. It's very interesting. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But we have these entrenched ways of thinking in the West where whenever there's a problem with our brains, how we think, our mind, we approach it from a psychological perspective, meaning let's go in there, work through the mind's problems and see if we can figure things out, figure out what the trauma is, etc. And I think there's some value to that, but it's not a comprehensive enough approach, right? So if my brain is not working because I'm feeding it the wrong fuel, then going in and trying to do talk therapy is not going to work. It's not going to do anything, because if the energy imbalance in my brain is incorrect and I'm feeding it primarily glucose and my metabolic health is off and my mitochondria are not functioning correctly and my cells are all sick, then no amount of therapy, no amount of talk therapy is going to make a difference. So we're really going after the wrong priority when we treat mental illness this way. When we say, okay, it's going to be exclusively medication and psychotherapy that's going to make the difference. We need to treat the underlying root cause, which is metabolic dysfunction, which means the brain isn't getting enough energy the right way. The cells are sick. The metabolism is sick. The mitochondria aren't functioning properly. This is what really causes mental illness. So there are ways to change this. There is a way to approach this problem such that we can actually solve it. There is a way to approach psychological trauma, psychological problems in the right order of operations where we can actually start to see noticeable difference in the way someone recovers and in a way that these psychological treatments will actually be effective rather than just spinning in circles, not making any progress. And the order of operations is critical here. We have to treat the metabolic brain illness first, and then psychology and medication, that could be a component of that, but that preferably will follow after. And what that looks like is if you're sick, if you have serious mental illness, if you have brain fog, if you have depression, if you have lack of motivation, lack of willpower, trouble in your relationships, rather than going to therapy, rather than trying to fix your mind, target your mind, let's target your metabolic health as a first approach, and then see if as a consequence of that, we can heal your brain such that it starts to operate correctly. Okay? Let me unpack that a little bit more slowly. So the traditional approach has been, you have some issue in your life, psychological problem, can't get out of bed in the morning, lack of willpower, lack of discipline, trouble in relationships, temper, addiction. The traditional approach and the way we've done this in the West is we've said, okay, we're going to send you to groups. We're going to send you to therapy. We're going to do whatever it is. We're going to try to approach your mind and insert some ideas in there to get you to work through and figure this out. If you're tired, whatever it is. So that's the wrong approach, right? The proper approach for a psychological problem is with a physiological treatment first. So what that means is, in a practical context, I'm having depression. I need to do a ketogenic diet, low carb diet to deliver ketones to my brain, which are going to heal my mitochondria in my brain. I'm going to do physical exercise, sleep hygiene, drug, alcohol, and nicotine abstinence, right? All those things, caffeine abstinence, that have a positive physiological effect on my body and my system. And as a consequence of that, my brain is going to heal. And when my brain heals, that might alleviate the depression. It might make me more focused at work. It might take away my ADHD. It might cure my anorexia, my eating disorder, right? We've seen that. We've seen that treating metabolic health can cure anorexia, right? So it's astonishing, the possibilities here. And traditionally, the approach has been purely psychological, where it's like, okay, I have anorexia, I have bulimia, I have an eating disorder. I'm going to do a bunch of therapy. We're going to try to work through the trauma, whatever psychological problems are causing me to engage in that behavior, to overeat, to binge, to purge, whatever that behavior is. And then I'm going to develop skills, and I'm going to go on try to limit calories, whatever that approach looks like. And then that's what's going to heal my eating disorder. And that's not the right approach. That's useful, but it's not the right order of operations. The right approach is, okay, what if your metabolic health is actually suffering? Your brain is not being fueled correctly. Your brain isn't working correctly. It's not functioning properly. And if we were able to treat that at a physiological level, as a consequence, you would be relieved of this eating disorder. So instead of going straight to the therapy, let's do keto diet. Let's do a keto diet where we encourage you to eat as much as you want, right? We limit carbohydrates to 30 grams a day. We allow your brain, your body, to start producing ketones as its fuel source, to fuel your brain with ketones rather than glucose. Your brain starts to use that different fuel source. Suddenly, all those defective neural pathways that were causing you to engage in that eating disorder, they heal up and they start to work correctly. And as a result of that, suddenly that eating disorder is not there anymore. And we have seen this time and time again with serious mental illness, where people go on a ketogenic diet, they approach mental illness with a physiological approach, right? Let's attack this metabolic health rather than attack my psychological problems. Time and time again, we see them get well. We see people go on a ketogenic diet who have been depressed for years, for decades. And within 2 weeks, they say, oh my God, I can't believe this. I feel better than I have my entire life on this ketogenic diet. This has done more for me than decades of therapy. We hear that over and over again, right? We hear that over and over again. And so I think we're really at this turning point in the way we approach our mental health, serious mental illness, or just any psychological problem, where we need to shift our approach from targeting psychology, from doing therapy, from using that as a first line of defense, to a physiological attack. And guys, what this looks like from a practical perspective and how I use this in my own life is, if I'm struggling and I have brain fog someday, or I can't focus, or something's bothering me, something psychological is bothering me in my life, there's some relationship thing that's not working out with my friends or whatever it is, I go to a physiological intervention first to treat that psychological problem. So my first questions are, have I exercised that day? Am I sleeping as well as I could be? And are my ketones high enough? Am I in a strict enough ketogenic diet? And what I find frequently is that the physiological interventions do more for my mental health than any psychological treatment, talking to someone, therapy could do for me in that moment, right? And I think I don't want to I don't want to convey the wrong message. I think there is still room for therapy, for working through trauma, for healing in that way. Like, I think there's still a place for that. But that type of therapy can be so much more effective when the brain is functioning properly, when the mitochondria are operating well, when everything's just, firing on all cylinders. And so that's really the way to do this, is to treat the physiology first, and then the psychological treatments can be that much more effective. The therapy can be that much more effective. The medication, if you're going to do that, I mean, a lot of people don't actually benefit from psychiatric medication. But if you're going to do that, it's going to have a much better chance of success if you're already doing ketogenic diet or carnivore and these other things. So that's all for today, you guys. I hope this helps. This was not as much a scripted, structured video as me rambling about how I believe we are approaching our problems in the wrong way. And this really extends beyond the realm of serious mental illness. We have it's deeply ingrained in our culture, this type of thinking, where you even see it in self-help books, where a lot of the self-help culture and the literature and the thought process is all around trying to trick the brain into achieving something. So tricking the brain into being in some motivated state. So I'm going to use this mental hack to be productive today, organize my time or whatever it is. I'm going to use this tactic to try to improve my conscientiousness in this relationship. And that's good and that can be useful, but we are just neglecting the metabolic health component, which plays a far more important role in these things than just these silly mental tactics, right? So for people who are struggling with addiction in many cases is a manifestation of poor metabolic health. And I see addicts who are struggling with their addiction, struggling to manage it, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, whatever it is, but then they're eating donuts and Coke and not sleeping well and not getting exercise, right? How is your brain going to work? How is your brain going to heal from that addiction if you're feeding it all that garbage? And addiction is not purely a psychological problem. Addiction is a physiological problem as well as a spiritual malady, right? I think in many, many cases. So for people who have problems with addiction, let's approach this from a metabolic perspective. Let's heal your metabolic health and then see if, as a result, maybe that addiction just alleviates itself. Maybe that addiction just goes away. Maybe your brain will stop craving whatever it is you're addicted to. And for some people, it's going to take more. It's going to take both approaches. It's going to take strict metabolic approach, right? As well as spiritual health, a 12-step program, maybe, whatever that looks like if you're an addict. But we're just neglecting this key part. And I'm so excited for the next 10 or 20 years because I think that's where mental health is going to go in the next 10 or 20 years, is we're really going to start to approach mental health from this new perspective, from this new framework, where we treat mental health as primarily metabolic in nature. And we treat the metabolism as the first line of defense. And then we can do therapy if it also helps as well. So that's all from me, guys. I'm going to upload this tomorrow. More videos to come, traveling on keto, so many good ones to come. I will see you all in the next video.